IVM.
Welcome to All Things Policy, a daily podcast by the Takshashila Institution. We are a bunch of policy nerds based in Bengaluru, and we like bringing fresh perspectives to Indian affairs and Indian perspectives to global affairs. So grab a cup of coffee, sit back, and join us for today's chat.
Hi, I'm Sarthak, and I welcome you all to yet another episode of All Things Policy. In the last few weeks, there have been multiple unfortunate, gruesome instances of violence against women in different parts of the country. And all this has raised questions about the safety of women, of the breakdown of law and order, and also of the crime situation in our society. Both in mainstream media as well as social media, we have seen different kind of debates and discussions regarding the same. And there have been comparisons made between states in regards to the crime situations. And there have been comparisons made across timelines as well. But most of these data analysis that we see, most of this comparison that we see is on the basis of data, on the basis of crime statistics. And in case of India, the basis of this data is NCRB. So again, NCRB, National Crime Record Bureau, they are the ones who come up with their reports regularly regarding the crime situation. So most of these debates discussion that we see is on this specific data that they collect. But there is one large issue here. The question is whether these statistics on crime reflect the crime situation on ground. So there might be some divergence here. And in case there is a divergence between the statistics that we have and the actual situation on ground, what needs to be done? So to discuss all this with me, I have Sowmya, who is my colleague and who is the head of corporate affairs, Takshila. Sowmya, welcome to All Things Policy.
Thanks, Sarthak. Happy to be here.
Yeah, Sowmya. So today we are discussing a serious topic. And before we start the discussion, can you just briefly tell us why do we need the right kind of crime statistics?
Yeah, so it's been concerning, right? Like not just with the recent events. I think this has been a trend that we've all kind of been concerned about. But what is of crucial information here is the relevance of crime data itself. Because if we have to kind of make any intervention, the most important ingredient for that would be, to understand what are the different kinds of crime that happen and the kind of data that we receive. Is it accurate enough? And only based on that we'll be able to arrive at policy interventions. Without the data being adequate, and if that is the yardstick we're going to measure the crime on, it's important that the data loss that's happening, especially in instances where there's an incident and lack of reporting, right? We might be assuming that the crime rate has dropped, or vice versa in states probably where crime rates look high only because of the reason that reporting has been done promptly. These are indicators which are very crucial for us to intervene from a policy point of view. So I think without that kind of data, it'll be hard to kind of arrive at good policy interventions.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, so empirical evidence is something which is very important for policy making and for improving law and order, for improving our criminal justice system. We need to have policy interventions, but all these policy interventions have to be backed by solid evidence. So that is the reason why we need to have right kind of criminal statistics. I mean, if you have the right numbers, you can find out whether our whatever existing crime prevention mechanisms that we have, they are working as expected or not. Do we need more manpower? All these things we can understand. And also from the perspective of the victims, we can find out whether what kind of financial loss they have incurred, what kind of physical damage has happened, what kind of psychological impact has happened. So for all these things, we have the right kind of data. But generally, it has been observed again and again that there is slight divergence. In fact, sometimes it can be major. There is a divergence between the crime statistics and the crime situation on ground. So first of all, what we'll do is we'll look at some of the interesting findings from the NCRB data. So NCRB stands for National Crime Records Bureau, and is based out of Delhi. It compiles crime statistics from different state crime records bureau, which in turn compile data from the district crime records bureau. And NCRB every year, annually, it comes with one report that is called Crime in India report. So the last report that we have is for 2019. It has the details of different kind of crimes across all the states, union territories, for the period January 2019 to December 2019. So, Sowmya, you have been going through the report. What are some of the interesting findings from that report, from the recent NCRB 2019 report?
Yeah, so there was a lot of changes and new categories got added, and some of the new crimes also have been removed. And for example, lynching, okay, that's out of it right now. But what is most, the concerning part of it has been, especially with, say, crime against women. Okay, overall, there is a decline in the incidents per lakh. But if you look at how the current situation is, we certainly are aware of women and the children crime rate has been increasing, right? It's on the rise. And though I think the system has been encouraging women to go and report any sort of crime that happens, at the police station for the FIR, the challenge has been that there is also a spike in murder after rapes. Okay. Now I'll tell you instances where in 2017 it was 223 murders, and 2018 it was 291. Because here what is happening is there is death penalty for such situations. And that's why, because of fear, there is an urge to kill the evidence itself. So this has probably been categorically, plotted against murder. And that's why the rape, scenarios have been lower in that sense for reporting alone. So under the categories itself, it's a little difficult to consume this data, and lot of things under riots as well, right? They are categorically put under sectors like agri, industry, family related, or student riots, or even it could be caste conflicts or communal or religious one. So, there have been a lot of instances being reported on the industry and water related issues. Okay. That means there has been frequent clashes and economic slowdown has happened. And that's why these disputes are showing up. And also water disputes has been on the rise because of the scarcity itself. So that has been showing up as a glaring one.
Yeah.
So these are the ones. We'll also talk about limitations as we progress, Sarthak.
Yeah, so I mean, so these are some major changes that you're talking about, and some of these things that you mentioned, incidents of violence against women or communal tensions. The kind of society that we have, because of the different kind of societal pressures that people might face, they might not be reporting some of these things. For example, generally there is this concern about honor among certain families, among the large chunks of our population. Whenever there is any incidents of violence against women, it is not reported because it is felt that family honor gets impacted. Same thing applies for child sexual abuse. So people might not be reporting it. Similarly, the thing that you pointed out about communal violence, communal tension, again, chances of people not reporting all these things, because there is always this fear that if they report it, again, there can be further clashes with the other community with whom they have already had clashes. So reporting of cases might not happen. I also went through the report. I found out a few interesting things here. Now, if you look at the cognizable crimes, UP accounts for the maximum number of cognizable crimes. Then comes Maharashtra, then Kerala and Gujarat. UP accounts for 12.2% of the total number of crimes. But just looking at the number of crimes, absolute number of crimes might not be correct, because at the end of the day, UP is a large state. It has the largest population. So the better indicator here is crime per unit population, the crime rate. Now, if we look at the crime rates, here we observe something which is very interesting. Delhi has the highest crime rate. So per 1 lakh population, Delhi has 1586 number of crimes, had 1586, almost 1600 crimes last year. And the next state in terms of crime rate is Kerala, then Gujarat, Tamil Nadu. So Delhi has highest, then Kerala, then Gujarat and Tamil Nadu. And if you look at the crime rates, UP has a very low crime rate. I mean, it's lower than the national crime rates. Bihar has even lower crime rates. For UP, the crime rate was 278, while for Bihar, the crime rate was 224. So compare it with Delhi. Delhi has 1586 crimes being conducted per 1 lakh population, while UP has almost 1/6 of that, 278, while Bihar has 224. So when we look at the crime rates, again, we get some information here. But the question is, can we take all these numbers at face value? What can be some of the issues that can arise if you are just looking at this numbers? Sowmya, what do you think?
So, yeah, I mean, like I said, right, when we began as well, the entire reporting itself is not adequate enough, right? And we can assume that, okay, crime rate in, places like Bihar is probably actually different from what it states. It's also because, the infrastructure, like we know in Kerala, definitely the reporting is better, and that's why it shows, a different number. And it shows that it does not necessarily mean the crime rate is high there, right? And also, only 5% of them actually get converted into FIRs, even though there is sometimes an oral complaint, because somebody who's powerless, not so educated, might end up in a police station and feel helpless because they probably can't, push the system to register an FIR. So even there's that kind of pushback in the system, which might lead into wrong data out there, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, there are some international parallels as well. I mean, there is this organization, United Nations Office for Drugs and Crime. They also, they compile data from all over the world. What are the different crime rates? So what they've done is, if you look at their data on some of the most serious crimes like murder, rape, sexual violence, and they have ranked countries on the basis of crime rates for these kind of offenses. And there you will find Sweden is at the top, which reports somewhere around 6,400 cases per 1 lakh population, while Denmark, Netherlands come next. So on the top is Sweden, then you have Denmark, then Netherlands, and Sweden reports around 6,500 cases per lakh population, and India's crime rate is just 87. And at the bottom, you have countries like Somalia, Iraq, Libya. So they report around 1.5 to 2.9 crimes per 1 lakh population. So this also gives you an idea that, I'm assuming that Iraq definitely doesn't have a better law and order situation as compared to Sweden, or Libya or Somalia don't have a better law and order situation as compared to Denmark and Netherlands. But this reflects that we cannot take these numbers just at face value. I mean, these numbers might be correct, but they are not reflecting the actual situation of crime on ground.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we can't also reach conclusions with this, right? Because if we can't conclude anything with this data. It might just be an indicator, but it may not reflect enough.
Yeah. So, I mean, it reminds me of something that I had read somewhere. So in case of Delhi, if you look at the number of crimes that are registered, offenses that are registered under Indian Penal Code, from 1998 to 2012, there was actually a drop in the number of crimes. But from 2012 onwards till 2015, there was a massive increase, almost 250% increase. So if in 2012, 54,000 cases were registered, by 2015, it had become around 2 lakh, that kind of variation. And it's not that crimes increased so much, but it was more about the changes that took place in the administration itself, how the incentive mechanisms that also changed, as a result of which police officials now started reporting, or they started registering whatever was being reported to them. But yeah, I mean, there is this entire process, how an criminal incident takes place, and finally it is registered. In between, again, there are processes. So if you are able to understand how things how all these things shape up, or how the process works, we can understand what are some of the problems, and if we are able to understand the problems, we can probably find out solutions to that.
Yes, absolutely. I think it's also important to lead into what needs to be done, right? We all realize that we're part of a system, and there could be challenges with how the data is reflecting right now. But Sarthak, why don't you kind of...
Yep. Yeah, Sowmya, before we delve into the solution, Sowmya, can you just explain us how this process shapes up from the incident to the registration, and what can be some flaws in the process?
So in a lot of instances, it's also, like I already mentioned, right, based on how educated the individual is, they can, push for an FIR or not. Like I'm talking about my own experience when a friend here had trouble with a person kind of, coming and troubling wherever she was going, trying to trace her, and just being there out at a place, even if she was at a restaurant, there were instances where this person is right out there waiting to kind of just follow her. And when I went to the police station, I realized that they asked, oh, how is that even bothering you? That person is not harmed, right? That person is just following your friend, but nothing has happened. And I realized that my friend couldn't speak the local language, and she was struggling to explain to them. And then I accompanied her just to explain the situation. And it took quite some time for them to realize that it was, we don't wait for something to happen, right? While you, register an FIR is because you're anticipating some untowardly incident that might potentially happen, and you need to be cautious. So, I feel these are instances which also test people, and you reach a point where, oh, is it really worth it, right? I'm talking about my own experience of helping out a friend in a situation where we're talking about a setup which is fairly secure and comfortable in a city like Bangalore, right? So I'm thinking, are people really privileged enough to, go back, bring somebody who can actually communicate why this FIR is required? And of course, somebody questioning you back that how is it even a threat makes you think, right? Like, okay, so you feel quite powerless in that situation. So for me, that registering of an FIR, if that the word go itself becomes tricky, it kind of fails you down for the next few things to come up, right? You're like, okay, maybe we don't have enough time and money. Plus, the power play, I'm sure, is more stronger when it comes to rural parts of India, where there could be, caste issues, where because somebody is of a different community, they kind of get away with things, right? Because there's a more powerful system that will kind of shun them down. So if we don't take these initial steps, I'm sure a lot of them will, stay out of, using this system of legal setup itself.
Yeah, so you've correctly pointed out. I mean, there can be criminal incidents, but sometimes because of multiple factors, it can be social, because of which people do not go and report the cases. There is some sort of fear, especially as you pointed out in the caste-related issues, or whenever there is a communal angle, people might not be willing to report. Also, sometimes people might think that, okay, we might try to resolve it on our own rather than taking that other person to the criminal justice system. So from incident to reporting, I mean, how many people who face a criminal incident and they go to report? So here there is one gap. And apart from that, as you mentioned, even if you go and report, not necessarily police officials will register the case as the case that you were facing, your friend was facing. So here also there exists a gap. So whatever data we have, the data does not reflect all these things. How many of the cases happened but were not reported? How many cases people wanted to report but these cases were not registered?
So I think, while we know there are, severe challenges in the system, I think it's also important to understand what needs to be done here on, right? Like to make sure that we have a more robust system, and what are the gaps that we need to certainly fulfill to bring about policy changes. So Sarthak, why don't you kind of, start off giving us probably a few hints there?
Yes, Sowmya. So first, I mean, see, even before we think of bringing about some massive changes in the system, first thing that we can do with the existing data is we can analyze it better. What I mean to say is, see, NCRB collates data, but from the data itself, we can have some smell check, which can give you an idea about the actual crime situation. See, at the end of the day, what we are trying to do, we are trying to find out what is the crime situation, what is the reality on the ground. So the existing data itself can give you some pointers. For example, there are different kinds of crime, and some crimes it is very difficult to hide. There are some crimes which will most likely be reported. Almost 100% reporting happens. These kind of crimes generally get public attention. There is media coverage as well. I'm talking about those violent crimes like murder, dowry deaths, or kidnapping. These kind of things are generally reported by the media. People also report these cases, and it gets the attention of the public. So from the NCRB statistics itself, you can look at these kind of data, which generally are highlighted. And from this, you can get an idea. It can be reflective of the law and order situation as well. Now, if you look at these numbers, for example, let's say, look at the murders, number for murders. Now, as we mentioned, Kerala is one of the states which has very high crime rates as compared to Uttar Pradesh. But Kerala has lower number of murder rates as compared to Uttar Pradesh. If you look at dowry deaths, Uttar Pradesh has the highest rate of dowries, 2.2 for every 1 lakh population. But when it comes to Kerala, Gujarat, which have overall high crime rates, they have almost zero dowry deaths. When it comes to kidnapping, here also Kerala and Gujarat, they are at the bottom. But states like Bihar, Jharkhand, Madhya Pradesh, Delhi, they are the states which have, they're the top states when it comes to kidnapping. So some kind of numbers we can use to analyze, not all the numbers, but some numbers per unit population, some crimes per unit population, some crime rates we can use to analyze the situation. Now, apart from this analysis, we can also think of some institutional changes. Some states have done it and they have got good results when it comes to law and order situation. As Sowmya pointed out, sometimes people might be afraid to report cases. Sometimes they might be intimidated. So maybe you can bring about these changes. For example, e-FIR, they have been introduced in many states. So you can register FIRs online. So that fear that is there of public officials or being exploited, that can be taken care of. In some police stations, some places, they have a women help desk. So especially issues that women face, the different kind of offenses that is committed against women. Women might not be comfortable discussing that, so women help desk can help that. So these are some institutional changes that can be done. Apart from that, in some places, in some countries, they have also devised new kind of mechanisms. They have introduced new methods to understand the crime situation. So right now what we are doing, we are looking at whatever is the crime that is getting registered. Instead of that, they do periodical surveys. And generally they are referred to as the victimization survey. So they will create a sample, representative sample of the entire population, and they will go to different households who are part of the sample, and they will ask them, the body which is organizing it, conducting it, they will ask them whether they have faced any kind of crime in the last 1 year or so. And again, if they face the crime, whether they reported the crime or not, or they wanted to report the crime or not, they went ahead with reporting or not. And also, if they went ahead to report it, whether it was registered or not, what kind of issues, challenges they faced at multiple levels. So this also gives you a better picture, better idea about the ground reality. And these kind of surveys have been conducted in multiple countries. US does it. It has the longest running national victimization survey. So again, they do it twice a year or so, and their census basically does it. So in India also we have mechanisms. Census does regular surveys. You have NSSO, which also does different kind of expenditure surveys. So we can probably use the resources that we already have to devise some of this. And again, the results, the issues that we have right now in regards to the crime statistics, it can be improved, because when you are doing a survey, people going and asking the households might give you information which the crime statistics might not give. The intimidation, the way some kind of crimes are not reported because there is a fear from the police officials, or there is a fear of exploitation. All these things can be will be reported in these kind of mechanisms. Also, it might throw light on newer things. It might give you an idea where you are having the challenges, where we are having the bottlenecks, whether the criminal justice system is not working, whether we do not have sufficient manpower, whether the infrastructure is not there. You can get an idea from this. So these are some suggestions I think can work in improving our idea, our knowledge about the crime situation in our society. So, do you think anything else we can also have for improving the crime statistics?
So I think the crime victimization survey, the NSSO as well, right? I think that's a good sample survey that we need to certainly leverage, because we'll be able to kind of figure out the gap that is from the actual data that is reported versus what's the findings with this, right? Because that is a good indicator to see where the gap is, and how do people actually reveal information when you approach them, because at the time of a crime situation, it might be emotionally difficult for a person to rationalize and take a call to report. But over time, maybe they're in a much better position to talk about it or even reveal, right? Because it's a past incident. So of what I have read, these victimization surveys have actually helped gather more information, because it becomes the experience is narrated and they talk about different things that have happened, right? Whereas reporting can be a little threatening. Like I said, the consequences of it is different. So I think that is something that will reveal actual versus the data that exists, right? And
exactly.
It's a good measurement to also see how do you actually encourage people to get to that phase, right? If it means that a police station is intimidating, then are there different ways, especially for women, right? Because the moment you enter, or if a police comes to a place, there's so much of hush-hush happening around that, somebody visited. Whereas it's not taken in the spirit of, it's to solve some problem that, the individual is going through. So I think these kind of measures will also help the individual reveal the entire information without having to worry about other artifacts for it, right? Like I said, it could be the social stigma associated with, or the threat of just going into a place, like police station, which people feel, oh my God.
Yeah, in fact, we have evidence of this working as well, in the sense that in India we haven't had this pan-India level victimization surveys, but in Tamil Nadu, one victimization survey was conducted in 2003, and they found out that only 4% of sexual crimes are actually reported. Just think of it. 96% of sexual crimes were not even reported, but we're getting to know about it since we had this victimization survey. These numbers would not have been reflected in the state crime records bureau data or the national crime records bureau data.
Yeah, I think people are very cautious, right, Sarthak, because there's a lot at stake. And mostly people are worried about the consequences of it, right? And based on how powerful the individual is, or, the kind of ecosystem they're in, there is courage or lack of it for reporting such instances. That's what I feel. Because it's not just in these cases, right? Even you look at corporates or any affluent atmosphere as well. Half the time things don't get reported because of, fear. And of course, time and money and everything else associated with pursuing it. So I think overall, it defeats the system, because, reporting a crime from the word go itself seems to be a very strenuous process, right? A long haul in some sense. I think we've had, I can't even call it a good conversation, but at least we probably have touched upon some elements of the NCRT about crime and what are the different limitations and how the data itself reflects currently. And if the policy change has to happen, like we discussed, if it is not for data, it could be very misleading in the kind of measures that we will finally arrive at. So thanks for being on this ATP.
Thanks everyone. Thanks Sowmya.
If you liked our show, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can tune into them on the IVM Podcast app, ivmpodcast.com, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can also follow IVM on social media. The handle is @IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And hey, if you'd like to dive into Takshashila's research on technology, strategy, and economic affairs, check us out at our Twitter handle @TakshashilaINST or our website takshashila.org.in.
I hope you enjoyed that show. If you aren't following us on social media, please do. We're IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And speaking of Instagram, Niharika Pandey joined Cyrus this week on Cyrus Says. Niharika is the strategic partner manager for Instagram India. Great conversation about the plans for Instagram in India. Karanjit Kaur joined the guys at Uncle Please Sit, another really interesting conversation about the patriarchy. On Advertising is Dead, old friend Suchita Salwan showed up. Suchita is the founder of LBB. Great conversation she had with Varun. Definitely do check that out as well. Tanvi Lad, who is a nationally ranked badminton player, was on the Habit Code with Ashton Doctor. Great conversation. I would highly, highly recommend that. The Football Shitwall guys are back. They've been back for a few weeks, but definitely do check out their latest episode. Great, great conversation they had. On Aditi Surana's Absolutely Right, Manju Sara Rajan was the guest, and again, a great conversation was to be had over there. As always, great conversations all across the board. Check out some of the other stuff like Smile India and Know Your Kanun and All Things Policy. All of them had fresh episodes this week, but with that, I hope to see you again next week.
Have you ever wondered how successful people do their thing? How do they navigate the challenges they often face? Are you wondering about the future of restaurants, film, education, technology, and everything else in between? Hi, I'm Gauri Devidayal, best known for being one of the brains behind The Table, an award-winning restaurant in Bombay. One thing my life as a restaurateur has given me is the opportunity to meet with some truly inspiring people, most often just by chatting with strangers at the community table. And that's what this podcast is about. It's about learning the new dimensions of business and understanding how different people swim this sea. It's an opportunity for me to pick their brains and ask them all the questions on my mind, whether it's about learning from their past experiences or talking about future trends. Through their journeys, stories, and insights, I hope you too, like me, will come away inspired and energized. So come, join me every Wednesday with your favorite drink, because this round is on me.